Hello, hello, good people of ZeldaSpeedRuns. We have a race coming for you tonight. I'm Amazing Amphros. I'll be providing some commentary for you guys. And we're going to have a race between Dr. J, PhD, and VictorSantafe. Both pretty experienced rando runners looking to compete in a very random Zelda 2 race. Many of you watching this channel are no doubt familiar with both Zelda 2 and randomizers. And in this Max Rando tournament, we go a step further. Not only is the game random, but what is randomized is itself random. So we're really going to be wondering, how many gems do we have to place? Do we start with the glove? If not, where is it? You need the glove and 99% of seeds. How will we get through locked doors? Are we going to be able to reach a level to survive in the bird nest that is Great Palace? Only the seed will provide us the answers. I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are too. Now, like I said, the biggest thing we're going to be looking for right off the bat in this race is we're going to see how many gems they have to place. The way Zelda 2 works, instead of having dungeons to clear necessarily, you have gems to place, and clearing a dungeon is just an opportunity to place a gem. If they have to place a lot of gems, then it's going to be a longer seed that's a lot of management. Here we see only 2 gems to place. Having to only place 2 gems means they're only going to have to beat 2 palaces necessarily. And speaking of the number 2, Palace 2 is very close to start. The good news from the runner's perspective is you can place 2 gems relatively quickly. Palaces 1, 2, and 3 are all pretty short. The bad news is the auto level you get at the end of the palaces is only available for your gem count, meaning it's quite easy for the runners to be stuck with very low levels going into Great Palace. So you expect a seed like this to be on the shorter end, but also on the executionally more difficult end. As we see some divergence right away, Dr. J has gone into Palace 2. He's looking to see what he can accomplish. Palace enemies tend to be easier to fight and more rewarding than overworld enemies. He might find Palace 2's item, he might find Helmet Head, while Victor is checking out some of the easy towns, and he's picking up a free spell from the river town of Saria, and it is the Thunder spell. We don't know whether Thunder is going to be required or not. I believe in these settings it's a 1 out of 4 it's required, but it's sure a nice bit of security, and if he gets his magic level up high enough to cast it, Victor will be able to use that Thunder spell to wipe out enemy groups relatively easily. We actually see a pretty generous array of starting items. We have the glove. Like I said at the start of the broadcast, that's an item you pretty much always need, so not having to scour the whole world for it is going to have a big speed-up effect on this seed. We have the raft, so we're able to travel to the eastern continent, which is half of the game, another pretty mission-critical item. And having both the flute and the hammer just reduce the number of things on the overworld that are going to block us. I saw we had 3 spells in addition to the Thunder we just picked up on Victor's side, but I didn't see what all of them were. I saw the top spell was Fire. I don't believe we currently know whether Fire is paired with the spell or not. I believe that's random, but sometimes Fire will have the effect of a different spell, so that's something to look out for as well. And you see what I was talking about with the Palace experience playing out really quickly, as Dr. J is already up to 3-2-3 basically instantly, while Victor's still at 1-1-1. But it's entirely possible that Dr. J is going to get blocked here in Palace 2, whereas Victor is completing a lot of important exploration that realistically they're both going to have to do. We also are seeing a lot of P bags as the items and key slots in Palace 2. It's random what's going to happen in that regard. You could have all keys, that's a setting in the randomizer. Here it appears like the P bags and keys were mixed chaotically, and we just happen to have gotten a whole lot of keys. Or a whole lot of P bags, rather. So it's probably going to be pretty hard to make much more progress in Palace 2, given the lack of keys. While Victor is finding a lot of connector caves, they aren't too appealing at this stage in the game. They're not only really hard to survive at these levels, but it's likely they don't go anywhere important. a lot of times you can just find both ends of the connectors naturally. Victor also finds the medicine. I saw the other two spells we had, one of which is the spell, which isn't very great. I still don't know what the last one is. But I saw they were both in East Continent slots, so that medicine will be an extra spell we can pick up in the town of Mido. And given that we already have 3 spells, possibly a paired fire, and that'll be a 4th spell, it's really likely that when we find Mido, we're going to be able to pick up the downstab, the most powerful combat technique in Zelda 2. So I would expect Victor to make that a big priority in this situation. Man, these palace enemies are worth a lot of experience this seed. Like, that Stalfos was worth 100. We see the Drippers are raised, and they're dropping 10 experience ropes, which isn't the greatest, but honestly, you can very easily do worse than 10 experience ropes from those Drippers. Given the locked door, and I think he's nearly done exploring, I wouldn't be shocked to see Dr. J look for a place to farm the last couple points for this level and up A out of here, but he seems to be making a move like he's going to explore more. And yeah, that last spell's totally jump. So if we find the town of Mido, we are guaranteed downstab, which, you know, obviously there's a big level lead on Dr. J's side, but I think I'd rather be 2-1-2 with downstab than 3-2-4 without downstab, just in terms of survival alone, among other offensive advantages of the downstab technique. And yet, jump cave at these super low levels in the dark, it's not very easy. Victor's handling it very well. I think showing a lot of that veteran prowess. But it's very easy to die in this cave. It's 3 screens long. It has a lot of enemies in it. Obviously, you can't see, which, for most mortals, it's a little harder to play the game when you can't see what's on screen. And like I said, this very well may lead nowhere, but I'm going to guess that Victor felt like his options were limited, and this was likely to open him up. And this certainly is looking like new territory, so this could have been just what the doctor ordered. Or if it helps Victor too much, maybe it's not what the doctor ordered in this race. And yeah, I don't like Dr. J's prospects here in Palace 2 very much. These blue iron knuckles they're terrible. Like, that's pretty much a standard fare blue iron knuckle he had to deal with, and I have a feeling there's going to be a locked door almost everywhere else. Dr. J finds himself a magic container. Oh man, fire was paired with fairy. Never mind everything I just said about Dr. J. He's in a great situation. There's a key too. And furthermore, we know there's extra lives in the drop pool, so it's entirely possible that Dr. J will be able to keep, as long as he just keeps fighting, he'll be able to keep getting the resources to finish this palace. Fire being paired with fairy is just a huge coup. Victor, looking for some hints. I don't know if it's guaranteed there'll be hints or not, but there were here, and he learns that Guma sits on the candle. Palace 5's item is probably an item that these runners would have last locationed anyway, and now Victor knows the item he was going to check last is one he's not going to need. So, people who like the candle and like seeing what's going on, you're not going to like the seed, because we're not going to find a candle unless there is a total disaster on stream. And yet, you see the power of that glove right away. This is the only room in Palace 2 that can be glove blocked, but it's devastating if you dig this deep into Palace 2 and get glove blocked. But starting with the glove just mitigated that risk. Speaking of risk mitigation, we see a 500-point P-bag in the drop table as well. And Dr. J, very wisely, I think, taking that magic level. We see Reflect in Mido. So, Palace 4 is often one of the most appealing palaces. if you have Reflect, because the boss is free. So that sets Victor up. Dr. J up Aing out of Palace 2. He found the item. It was just a P-Bag, which he had to see as somewhat disappointing. He already got to 433. I was trying to say with the magic level that when you see fires paired with a good spell, the best spells for it to be paired with are, without a doubt, Fairy and Thunder. Then you want to take a bunch of magic levels, because Fire's cost tends to decrease more with magic leveling than any other spell. It's very expensive at low levels, but it becomes one of the cheapest spells at high levels. Usually follows a pretty strict curve downward. So if Dr. J gets up to magic 5 or 6, he's going to be firing off fairy spells for under 1 bar of magic, which not only will let him just totally ignore locked doors, for all the obvious tactical advantages of that, but even difficult combat rooms you can just fly over. It's the best form of defense, flight. While Victor has found either Palace 3 or 6, you can't identify which one it is from the first room. They have exactly the same properties in this entry chamber, but we'll probably know pretty quickly if he goes any deeper, and it looks like Victor is going to take that dive. Palace 3 is one of the most generous palaces out there, whereas Palace 6 is pretty much the opposite of that. Palace 6 is just gargantuan. Judging by the low enemy concentration in this room, I'm suspecting 3. I'm not the best at telling 3 and 6 apart from these ambiguous room shapes like this, but this is confirmation. Totally 3. This room shape with all the blocks on the floor is only found in Palace 3. And 3 is a great find. Victor already has downstab. He just saw fires paired with fairy on his end. The boss here is very difficult without downstab, but one of the easiest bosses in the game with downstab if you know the setup, and I have every confidence that Victor knows all the setups to shred this boss with downstab. Probably knows some of the more advanced fights that are a little quicker but more risky too, if I had to take a guess. And you kind of see what I was saying with what you have to do. Dr. J's largely just retracing Victor's steps with this overworld exploration. Victor found some good stuff, and at this point Dr. J is going to find the same. Kind of the good news for Dr. J on this move is he's a higher level, which means that that possibly mandatory trip through Jump Cave might be a little easier for him. And when he starts placing gems, he's going to get a little more out of them. Whereas even if Victor prevails over this boss, which I personally give Victor pretty good odds of winning this fight, but Attack 2 is looking really rough. It's a possibility in the Zelda 2 randomizer that the strength of your attack or magic levels could be randomized, and I'm guessing that attack is randomized, and in this case, he got a really low power attack, too, and it took him like 30 hits to kill the boss, and that actually completely messed up the normal setup because the boss actually survived all of those hits and then moved out of position. But yeah, even if Victor wins this fight, his problem is he's not going to get a lot out of this gem. He'd only get something like Attack 3, which we're seeing that Attack 3 would be a lot better than Attack 2, but at the same time, you only have 2 gems to place. Great Palace could be pretty nasty, and you really don't want to go in there with a level like 444. Even if you're a great player, you can only do so much when you can't kill any enemies and everything one-shots you. And yeah, Victor is doubling down on Palace 3. He might be planning to re-challenge the boss, or he might be looking for the item, because he only explored one of the branches here in 3. And 3 is a really small dungeon. 3 and 1 are significantly smaller than the other 2 dungeons, or the other 4 dungeons. So Victor might just feel like there's a good chance at an item here. And you see Victor taking a new path, so it looks like that's what his thinking is. I think he's going to want to take a death here. He's going to need to cast magic in order to keep moving. Looks like he was going for a sneaky red jar, and he just didn't get it. And no, Victor's totally not looking for the item. He's going straight back to the boss. So, I'm a big believer that in randomizers, it benefits you to kind of set your pride aside a bit. Like, I think everyone watching this knows that Victor is a good enough Zelda player to beat this boss. But the question is, how beneficial is it to Victor to beat this boss right now instead of come back later when it's easier? Because if he starts failing it more, it's going to be more time loss. Even if he wins, it's going to kind of put him behind the ball on experience. I feel like there's a bit of pride coming into this decision. He does have the win. And only 200 experience as well, so he's getting nothing from this gym. If he chooses to place it. But I don't know that he's going to have great options not to place it, because he had to ferry through a door to even get here. And he has only access to a bot. If he lets the bot kill him, it takes him down to his last life. He can ferry through the door to get out of here, but then he won't be able to get back in. It's just a really tough situation that I don't think there's a good answer in Victor's situation. And honestly, this is the reason he probably just should have waited and done this palace a little bit later. Because now he's only at 233. We know Magic 3 doesn't actually reduce the cost of fire, which Victor didn't know when he took it, but it's just salt in the wound. And he's closer to finishing the game, but maybe made the game harder on himself than he had to. There's still a lot of race. We'll see how it plays out. Victor finally taking attack 3. You can see right away, in this seed, attack 3 is drastically stronger than attack 2. Yeah, the problem is, if he jumped the gym, he wouldn't be able to get the 200 experience from killing the boss again. I don't think there was an easy answer. I think the strongest play in his situation was just placing the gym and trusting in his own skill. Because, for all we know, Great Palace is easy. And even if Great Palace is of a medium difficulty, Victor is a seasoned player. He can probably handle it unless he gets just a flat-out horrible GP. And if you're able to handle what the randomizer throws at you, there is a lot to be said for just keeping on moving. So we see Palace 1 in the West. We've seen 1, 2, and 3 all in the West, so I actually wonder if the palaces didn't move from their native continents in this case. While Victor's made his way to the East, the Eastern continent is the land of 500 P-Bags and deadly monsters. And even though we started with quite a generous array of stuff, we did not start with the cross, so expect to take just random big hits walking through these encounters from those invisible Moas. The forest, swamp, and graveyard encounters all are pretty likely to have them. The grassland and desert encounters are a little bit safer. I can't say I really understand Dr. J going after this blue iron knuckle. Like, I believe he's a good enough player to kill this, but it takes a while, and it's only 150 points. It's not insubstantial, but is it really worth it? I don't know. What may be really worth it is that 36-point life spell that healed 4 bars. The amount life healed is apparently randomized this seed, and it rolled up. So you're going to get big heals out of life. And we only saw it heal 4 because Victor is only missing 4. Life in vanilla heals 3, and the randomizer flag that randomizes how much it heals makes it range from 1 to 5. We know it heals at least 4. It could be a 5 for all we know. So that's a pretty big boost to your survival. Might honestly make it a little more palatable being stuck at those low levels, having such a powerful healing resource on hand. And kind of bad luck finding an extra life in this static desert encounter. That is almost always a 500-point P-bag. As we see Palace 6, Victor, I think, very wisely decides he wants nothing to do with Palace 6 and instead opts for the far more lucrative Maze Island. Maze Island will have 2 free items, and if the palaces aren't randomized, we expect to see 4 here, which, given that Victor has Reflect, he very well could bite on 4 for his second gem. It would be a very logical play. And then he might just look for Great Palace and try to beat the game. So, a lot of the properties of the palaces are randomized, but there's 2 things that are not randomized. Well, there's more than 2, but 2 things here that are relevant. Which room shapes exist in a palace are not randomized. And also, the decorative pillars in the background always have the same look. So the pillars with the faces on the top correspond to palaces 1 and 4. The smooth pillars with very little texture to them are 2 and 5. And the kind of striped pillars are palaces 3 and 6. And you can also you can see other things to differentiate 1 from 4. 4 is an invisible not an invisible Moa, a flying enemy in the very first room, one of those fire-dropping Moas. 2 has a statue in the first room that drops a red jar. 5's statue in the first room doesn't drop anything. You can't distinguish 3 or 6 from the first room. You'll just know it's 3 or 6. But you can often figure out which one it is from a couple extra rooms in 3 or 6. 6 is a very large dungeon with high concentrations of enemies and a lot of 6 spaced rooms. 3 has a couple unique room shapes. In this case, we saw a unique room shape in 3 very early, which helped us figure it out. And as I expected, yeah, the palace locations aren't really randomized here. So this is Palace 4 on Maze Island, just like in Vanilla. With Reflect in tow, 4 is a really good dungeon. Karok is just as easy of a boss at Attack 1 and Life 1 as Attack 8 and Life 8. 4, I'm not going to say it's a small dungeon because it's not, but it's much smaller than 5 and 6, and it's comparable in size to 2. So it's not a bad dungeon to invest your time in. 4 is really heavy on the locked doors. I feel 4 is the hardest of the dungeons to navigate in terms of just solving locked doors, but with Fire paired with Fairy, these players have the resources they need to address that particular challenge. Yeah, I don't pay a lot of mind to the other aesthetic features of the dungeons. Like, the tiles the floors are made of are randomized by the randomizer, as well as the palettes. I haven't really taken note of whether the background tiling is randomized beyond the pillars. Certainly, you might be able to discern something from these unique window shapes. I think you'll always get another tell faster, but it's an interesting thing to be aware of. And for fans of farming, which thankfully I don't think we're going to see a lot of farming here, you might notice that those flying skeleton fish were worth 20 points apiece, which is the maximum they can be worth. If you wanted to just sit there and farm them, there are a lot of slower grinds than that. Of course, it's even faster not to grind at all, but it's always good to just make a mental note, oh, that's a really grindable spot, in case you run into some unexpectedly terrible stuff in the seed. And you also see Victor dropping all the way down in Palace 4. The way the randomizer works, any room in the palace is guaranteed to connect to either the entryway or the boss in every palace. So in palaces with drops, it's possible that the drops only lead to the boss and have no way back up. So that possibility makes it usually the most efficient way to find the boss in palaces with drops. Just take as many of them as you can and look for the boss at the bottom. It'll either lead you back up or lead you to the boss. As we do indeed find Karok, as Victor has just barely enough magic to cast the Reflect spell. And it's entirely possible Karok's going to teleport on top of him and kill him here. But that's totally RNG. There's no real skill to the fight. Even if it had happened, which it didn't, I'm pretty sure he had a life to just beat Karok again on another try, as Victor is going to have his final gem placed, while Dr. J is about to take on Horsehead and get his first gem placed. So you can already see this gem is going to put Dr. J at 545. Victor's at 345, so Dr. J has a lot more attack. They're about equal on the other stats, with Dr. J having a gem to place. Given what we know about the palaces, we would expect Great Palace to be at the end of Death Road, as in Vanilla. Or the Valley of Death, it's what it's actually called. I don't know where I got Death Road, I keep saying it. But, Victor could, if he's feeling bold and feeling his own skill, go straight to Great Palace right now, see if it's easy, and just try to beat the game. Instead, he up-A'd back to the Western Continent. I'm not sure if he's doing this because he wants to find more resources, or if he's doing it because he was deep in Maze Island and he believes this is a faster way to reach the Great Palace. It kind of remains to be seen. Right now, he's kind of wandering around, going back through the jump cave. So we're going to have a couple minutes here before we discern Victor's intention. It's possible that Victor is going to make his way to Great Palace, and if the palace is kind, we could have a very fast run from Victor's end, while Dr. J is putting a little more time into setting himself up for success when he gets there. Which, if Great Palace is really nasty, the strategy could really benefit Dr. J. But there's also the other side that if Great Palace is not nasty and Victor's skill holds true, Victor could be done before Dr. J reaches the Great Palace. So this is a big clash between two very different approaches to low gem seeds, with ultimately the race outcome telling us who was correct today. We see Dr. J going to turn in the trophy. We don't know what spell this is. It seems unlikely to be a good spell. I think the best thing this could be is Shield. Or was this where Reflect was? No, this wasn't Reflect. Reflect was Mido. Yeah, this is Shield. Probably the best thing it could have been with what else we knew, but not a massive help. Especially because we know the life spell, which is pretty free in old Kasuto, is turbocharged. You're not going to get a ton of value out of Shield in this seed. Yeah, the way it works is you still have all 6 palaces you could clear no matter what. That's just always true in the Zelda 2 randomizer. When the gem counts are randomized like they are here, you can beat any palaces you want. You just have to beat the number that correspond to the gems. In this case, because they started with 2 gems, you can beat any 2 palaces of your choosing, and those are the 2 gems you place. You see, Victor chose palaces 3 and 4, which I think were pretty solid choices. 3 is very short. 4 is a very easy palace with the Reflect spell, which Victor found without any real difficulty. Whereas Dr. J knocked out Palace 1, which Victor just found for the first time. I don't think Victor realized that Great Palace was going to be in the west, or in the east rather, and he was looking for the last palace in the western continent, hoping it was GP. Was disappointed with Palace 1 there. That would explain a lot of Victor's strategy and why he up-A'd, because finding the last palace in the west is indeed much faster than finding palaces in the east. But of course, when you're looking for GP, finding not GP is very disappointing. And after you've placed all your gems, one has very little value to you as a player. Maybe you find an item in there that's the best thing. One has very few enemies, so it's very hard to gain experience there if you're looking to grind. Its boss isn't even worth anything. So with those gems placed, you see one, you're mostly just going to keep moving and look for something better. While Victor is cleaning up some of the easier items he's bumping into here in the Western continent, maybe he was a little worried about his levels, taking that attack 4. But if you're just thinking about Great Palace, like, attack 4 will help a lot against Thunderbird if he has to fight it. Otherwise, his attack's so low, realistically, he's not going to be able to kill anything other than, like, an Orange Bird Knight that doesn't have any health. You might be better off taking Life and Magic, because those will extend your survival, and you're not killing enemies in GP anyway. You're just way too weak for that to be a realistic strategy, and it's over 20 minutes of grinding to get enough attack levels in Victor's position for killing the GP enemies to become realistic. And that's just not going to happen. Yeah, you do have to worry about that Thunder cost. It is worth noting they both have 6 magic bars, so Thunder is castable. It would be mechanically possible to defeat the Thunderbird. Probably much easier with Dr. J's levels than with Victor's. But possible for both of them. But there's a reasonably good chance either Thunderbird doesn't exist, because that's a flag in this randomizer, or if he does exist, he's not in the way. And if you don't have to fight Thunderbird, you don't really have to fight anything in Great Palace. You just have to survive. Which, you know, surviving in Great Palace can be easier said than done, but it's worth taking a look. Maybe it's easy. You see Dr. J is working toward his final gem. I don't know if he's going to pull it off. Dr. J is really hoping to get this next level manually and place the gem and be at 566, I think. 566 is, I'm not going to say it's a good level for Great Palace, but by low gem seed standards, 566 is very powerful. And I think an experienced rando runner is probably at least somewhat confident at 566 going into GP. Unfortunately, that game over is going to set Dr. J back, and he's just going to abandon Palace 4. Or Palace 3, rather. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I guess it's not having an ego, knowing that Palace was hard for you. There's probably something easier elsewhere, but at the same time, you know Victor's an experienced player. You're a half an hour in. You're in a palace you can complete that's also one of the smallest palaces in the game. There's a lot of danger in moving on. Though I guess he was really just looking for downstab, which I guess I didn't realize that this is the first time Dr. J has found the town of Mido. Yeah, that boss in 3 would have been much harder. Maybe he's just going to pick up downstab and go back. Dr. J also heavily explored Palace 2, so it's a realistic option for him to kill Helmet Head as well. But I definitely feel like Dr. J's learned what he needs to learn about this seed. He's gotten his last important resource now in the form of the downstab. He's got to put on the jets and try to catch up to Victor in game position, while Victor really just needs to find Great Palace. I think we finally spotted it on screen, but now it's a question of where is the entry to the valley? Looks like that wasn't too bad. And there's some static encounters in the Valley of Death that can be tricky to deal with. Victor just burned all his magic on Thunder, so he's probably going to go for an encounter skip here. If you get a random encounter on the same tile that you would get a fixed encounter, the random encounter overrides the fixed encounter and lets you pass the tile easily. In vanilla, both the random and the fixed encounters in the Valley of Death are dangerous, just the random ones are much faster and less dangerous. Here in the randomizer, and the random encounters are just grassland encounters, this technique's power is just magnified, as you see Victor very easily getting out of those two fights, expertly pulling off those encounter skips too. There's randomness to the timing with the random enemy movement, and it can be pretty precise. Victor finally misses one, but all around his execution on these has been very solid. And there's no more than 3 fixed encounters in the valley, so Victor's smooth sailing into GP. I think Victor picked up an extra life along the way, which is why he didn't up-A. You can up-A at the start of Palaces to heal all of your magic and life, but if you have extra lives, there's no reason to. You just are losing resources by doing that. As we see Thunderbird right at the start. So we don't know if in the flags the randomizer gave us, Thunderbird is necessarily required. But with Thunderbird in the room directly to the right of start, and the extra life right next door to that, Thunderbird's required. Just because, whether he was required by the flags or required by luck, we'll never know. But you are not getting around T-Bird today. And, here's the deal. There's a pattern where you kind of get Thunderbird stuck in a pendulum motion. We're almost certainly going to see it. The more aggressive Thunderbird strats are nearly impossible at low attack. So, if you have good execution, you can beat Thunderbird with any attack level without damage. But it's hard. And, it's hard to do perfectly consistently without damage for a very long fight. An attack 4 is going to take probably over 50 hits. So this is going to be a massive test of how consistent Victor is at execution. You see him being very cautious with his movement, not to take any of these fireballs. Which, given the long fight he has ahead of him, is smart. But at the same time, when you take this long to get the hits, I mean, remember, you have to slog through all of this. If this is a 5-minute long fight and you die at the end, it's pretty bad. And when Thunderbird hits half health, the volume of fireballs will increase greatly. So a lot of these sort of slower moves Victor's making will no longer be safe. Looks like he's settled down into a cleaner pendulum pattern. If your pattern is perfectly clean, even the speed up won't affect it. So as long as Victor keeps the movement relatively cleaner... Oh man, took a couple bops there. No more mistakes allowed. But yeah, if he can reestablish a clean pendulum and keep it clean, he'll be able to do this. But a mistake is gonna start this fight over for him. And we saw he had 6 lives, so he has a lot of tries, but it's not just a question of whether you have the lives, it's also a question of the time. Failing boss fights can be very slow, especially long boss fights like low attack Thunderbird. And there's our first death. And honestly, another thing to keep in mind, Thunderbird being in the second room isn't super shocking. It's something that certainly comes up with required Thunderbird. Because when Thunderbird's required by the randomizer, the only path, there must be no path to Darklink that does not pass through the Thunderbird room. and you must only be able to approach the Thunderbird room from the left. Therefore, Thunderbird is very frequently either right at the start or right at the end of Great Palace. Those are the two easiest ways the randomizer can satisfy those rules. But in general, you tend to see that when it does that, it often correlates with the shortened Great Palace flag, which has far fewer of those connector rooms that Thunderbird could easily slot into. So if Victor gets past this Thunderbird, I'd say it's very probable we're looking at a short Great Palace, which will just greatly reduce the amount of remaining time he has to invest into Great Palace in order to find Dark Link. So while Dr. J certainly has an opportunity here, I think Dr. J is depending on some difficulty in this fight from Victor and a clean time in the fight for himself, because while his level is better, it's not worlds better. He's at 565 instead of 455. I'm going to guess that unless Thunder's cost went down, it's not really going to change anything for him, other than the extra attack level probably really reducing the number of hits. Oh man, Victor takes another death. He was really far in that attempt. While Dr. J is just hunting for more items, clearly Dr. J's pretty nervous about the prospect of having to do something like a Thunderbird fight at 565, but I think Dr. J can probably get one more level, which will put him at 566. Life 6 might be a good survival boon to him, but I don't think he has much time left in this race to explore and grind too much more before Victor is just going to find his way through this fight. Frankly, even if Victor game overs, it doesn't really change Victor's situation. I think Victor has no viable strategy here other than continuing to fight Thunderbird until he either wins or sees a dot done. 40 minutes in Great Palace already with everything else we know. I think you got to gut this one out. And I do trust that Victor's probably going to win this fight, if not this attempt, within the next couple. So the more time Dr. J spends not in Great Palace, the more probable it becomes that what's likely the last truly great hurdle between Victor and Dot Done will be handled. As Victor pauses to contemplate his life decisions and contemplate what he wanted to do there, stretch his hands a bit. Looks like whatever he was contemplating worked out great for him as he made it through. Some really clever pause buffers there with the spell menu. Guarantee it's obviously slower than just making it through without pause buffering, but any amount of pause buffering here is totally worth it if it's a difference between living and dying. And Victor hasn't gotten hit as long as he's been utilizing this strategy. Well, I spoke a little too soon there. Sorry for the Doso commentator's curse, Victor. Hopefully he can reestablish the pendulum. Thunderbird played nice there, not shooting a fireball right at that corner as he moved back to the pendulum reset position. And T-Bird's low-ish. I think he's about to drop to 2 visible bars left. So there's still some real work to do, but Victor is most of the way there. He's probably feeling like, as long as he stays disciplined, keeps his movement clean, this could be the run that gets him past this bird. And if this is Victor's run to make it past the bird, it's a very hard road for Dr. J to catch up from here. If you're a Dr. J fan, I'm not going to say you should root for his death. Rooting for people to fail feels so cruel, but it would definitely help Dr. J out if Victor slipped up here, to say the least. Last visible health bar. Thunderbird being a jerk. Nintendo did not expect you to be at Attack 4 for this boss. Like, if Victor were at even attack 6, Thunderbird would have died so many times over. Instead, he just barely gets knocked out. I think the important thing for Victor, and here, the fact that Victor is a very experienced rando player, I think is gonna help him out a good deal here. It's really easy, especially for newer players, to go totally on tilt after something like that. You had a win, like, in your hand, and, I mean, you made a mistake, it's your fault, but it's really hard, the mistake's understandable, and now you lost, and you have to start all over. Staying calm, composed, and using the same kind of execution that got you so close to winning, right over again to win this time, is how Victor's going to win this race. I trust that he's the type of player who's not going to get rattled by that. And if you're looking to be a racer and succeed on this kind of stage, that's the kind of composure you got to look to have. Don't get rattled by mistakes and just gut it out. I don't know that we saw the ocean tile item. Dr. J's about to show us what it is. Just an extra life. Maybe we did see it. It looks like Victor is playing with a keyboard as his controller, which sounds impossible to me, but you're perfectly allowed to play on emulator, which would make doing that very easy, and as long as your controller doesn't give you a mechanical advantage, like a turbo feature, you're allowed to use a controller you want. And a keyboard's non-traditional, but if it's what you're comfortable with and what you like, you can go on ahead. Kind of reminds me of the theory for fighting game players who use those hitbox-style controllers. Because there's obviously like a manual dexterity advantage to a keyboard. You never have to move your fingers off the keys. You just use a different finger for every input. It's just a lot less physically intuitive, so I think most of us, certainly me included, would find it very difficult. And yeah, Victor is pretty far in the fight. He's pausing. He's actually, like, shaking his hands off, just staying fresh, recomposing himself a little bit. He's down to 2 bars of visible health on Thunderbird. He still is allowed to, I think, take 2 more hits and not die. Victor's in a very good position this run. But, again, he can't slip up. A single mistake can cascade so easily. Oh, heavy pause bumpers. Thunderbird is being a huge jerk there. That was impressive not getting hit in that situation. I think it might have been a little hard for everyone to see where those fireballs were through all the pauses, but nowhere nice would be a good summary of where those fireballs were. Oh, down goes the bird. So, Dr. J's gotten up to attack 6. His Thunderbird will be way easier when he gets there, and it looks like he's pretty close to getting there. But frankly, it's entirely believable that Dr. J is already out of time. Because Victor is starting to make progress in exploring the Great Palace proper, and we don't know where Darklink's going to be. We've already seen a fork in the road after Thunderbird, so any room traveling to the right, we could easily just see Darklink pop up. And that could be the end, whereas Dr. J has no chance to encounter Darklink until he makes it through that fight. At 665, that fight is going to be much easier than it was for Victor, but it's probably still not going to be free. Victor's looking for a red jar from this. This is a room with a random 50-50 red jar or red bird knight. It's much harder to grab this jar without upstab, which, for those fans of trolling, You could be rooting for an upstab block in the Great Palace, which would send our players in search of the town of Darunia. Given that we suspect this is a short Great Palace, we've seen no evidence to suggest it's not, and with the number of rooms we've seen without any of the rooms eligible for removal, it feels really likely it's a short GP that greatly reduces the odds of an upstab block, but it still could happen. As Victor, after getting an impressive run of impressively awful RNG on that red jar, decides discretion is the better part of valor and moves on. As we see the spiciest of chickens blocking our path. Yeah. I'd go back and try to get that red jar again too, because you're gonna die. Well, that's another way to get a red jar. Take Magic 6. Just do it and cast life, dude. Oh, no, he's just taking Life 6 instead. Life 6 will be more beneficial in the long run in Great Palace, but it means he's still trying to get this red jar, which he gets those, so Victor's gamble pays off there, as he gets fully healed in life and magic. I would have taken Magic 6 because you know life heals you at least 4 bars, and I don't think we ever confirmed it could heal you 5, but certainly the way things worked out, that ended up being a good call. Yeah, we'll see how many hits Thunderbird takes. If your attack level strength is not randomized, Thunderbird takes 18 hits at Magic 6. So if he takes more than 18, then you know attack 6 is weaker than average. If he takes fewer, it's stronger. If he takes exactly 18, it's about the same. Unlike other enemies, Thunderbird's base health is never randomized, so if it takes a different number of hits, it's only because attack is different. You can see this is a much easier fight at attack 6 than attack 4. I'm not counting, but I can tell you that was a lot fewer than 48 hits. As Dr. J gets up to life 6 for an accursed level 666. I will say, if you're looking to get into the Zelda 2 randomizer, the Zelda 2 randomizer has a lot of features that make it a lot friendlier than the vanilla game. Being able to up A or game over within palaces and not have to start over from the beginning area is a huge advantage. You're able to make yourself start with items like the candle, which can help if you're not comfortable with darkroom navigation. And it's a super customizable randomizer. These max rando settings are pretty aggressive. I would not recommend playing under the settings you see our racers using unless you are an expert. But there's many other settings in the randomizer you can use that are far more beginner friendly. So if you find this interesting, definitely download the Z2R and give it a shot. This is totally short GP. Short GP is still approximately the length of Palace 5. Like, I don't think we've seen a single room that can be removed by the short Great Palace flag. You know, none of those long bridges that just connect left to right. None of the fairy cast rooms. None of those elevators that just are connector elevators that are kind of a waste of your time. Well, we're seeing a whole lot of the three-way rooms. And seeing three-way rooms and drops and such just back-to-back, followed by elevators, it's the classic short GP pattern. And oh yeah, if you've run the vanilla speedrun for Zelda 2, randomizer will be... I mean, there's learning in terms of like the spatial awareness in that. You'll have to learn a couple rooms that aren't in vanilla routing, like the terrible room in Palace 5 that I think only rando players pay a lot of mind to. But for the most part, a vanilla runner should find picking up rando a pretty comfortable experience. Yeah, we just kind of see them exploring in GP. Victor has run into one of the drop destinations, but not really any of the drops proper. I have a feeling we're looking for a drop to really get us moving in this GP. If once you kill Thunderbird, or any boss actually, just including Thunderbird, the boss stays dead forever. Even if they up A or game over, that will not be an issue. In Great Palaces like this, you often actually see, you know, Thunderbird's in the third room, a player has a difficult fight and ends up low on lives and resources after the fight, and up A there to just explore GP proper with full resources is a very common decision. In this case, both players walked into GP with a bunch of extra lives, so that sort of strategy wouldn't have been a great call, because when you up A, you get your initial stock of extra lives back, and they both had far more extra lives in their initial stock walking in. And yeah, it looks like going right from that elevator at the start just kind of wastes your time. I don't think Dr. J has fully concluded that yet, whereas Victor has and has moved on. Victor chose not to take the bridge drop and has found another drop destination. That bridge drop could be very good, or it could lead to the destination right next door, which would be about a neutral outcome, or it could lead back to the drop destination we saw way deep in that loop that goes nowhere. This is a gut check moment. If you take this drop and it moves onward, this is probably a race-winning decision. If it goes backward and Dr. J doesn't make this decision, we have a lead change. I do not believe this led backward. Yet. Because, yeah, that was a room we hadn't seen before. Now, what we're wanting to see here, if you're a fan of Victor, is the drop destination that lets you go left or right. That's the one we haven't seen yet. Instead, we end up in the one right next door, which is kind of a neutral outcome. You didn't really get set back, but you didn't make progress either. So it turns out that was actually not that critical of a decision to take that or not. That being said, there are two drops left. One leads way backward, and I would say there is a strong probability the other leads to Dark Link. So this is exactly the kind of Great Palace that can easily create a 50-50, where you have to decide between two similar drops. One wins the game, and the other loses the race. This could be an exciting finish. Yeah, Victor still has a positional lead, but if he takes a wrong turn or gambles on the wrong drop, Victor could lose very easily. But Dark Link's right there. There must have been a path we didn't see that led to the final drop. And Dark Link is an incredibly easy fight in the United States version of Zelda 2, which the randomizer is based on. It would be very surprising to see Victor fail this fight. Or really anyone who enters able to take more than one hit to fail this fight. Just stand in the corner. You can mash sword if you want to. There's a certain timing to it that makes it faster, but even if you mash, you'll still win. It's just slower. And yeah, Victor had everything down. He knows that fight. Good game to Victor, who's coming in first place with an official SRL time of 58:52. And look at that, Dr. J right behind. Dr. J's bigger levels and better GP pathing saved him a lot of time in Great Palace, but he just spent a little too long getting in, and Dr. J wasn't able to quite catch up. Dr. J going for crouch stab strats. They're a little less consistent than standing stabs, but they have faster frame data. It's largely preference which you go for. As Dr. J has finished it off with an official SRL time of 59:33. That is within a minute. Excellent race.
Hey, guys.
Looks like I am joined here by Victor. Congratulations on your victory, Victor.
Wow, I just can't believe what happened. Wow, this one was nerve-wracking the whole time. I don't know, even before starting, I was way nervous than on the other ones. And yeah, my hands were cold, and yeah, I had this queasy feeling I was gonna be trolled. And then before entering Great Palace, I started finding all these one-ups, and I started thinking, this one is gonna make me fight Thunderbird. And then I find Thunderbird, and I walk to the left, and I say to myself, the left side will be the one-up room, and it was. I knew I had to fight Thunderbird, and I'm pretty bad at it. And attack 4 is not so bad, but for me it is pretty bad. So yeah, I had a lot of lives, although it was in the beginning, so that kind of didn't matter. That's kind of the way of the game telling you to fuck off. I don't know. This game is pretty nasty with you, and yeah, I kind of defeated Thunderbird on my 4th or 5th try. I had 2 kind of close attempts. The other ones were not that close.
Yeah,
and then this Great Palace that was pretty. I felt it was pretty long. And although I think it wasn't, but I think I missed something in the Jakimu's room. And when I was exploring the other route, the whole time I was feeling like I made that mistake. But thankfully, Dark King was on the route I was on. So, and then when I finish up and I see Dr. J finishing up like 10 seconds later, that was wow, nerve-wracking the whole way.
Yeah,
So yeah, we're also joined by Dr. J. Congratulations on having such a close race. It was pretty interesting, and I'm sure you both could believe pretty easily. You two had very different strategies to this seed that converged in a very tense way at the end.
Yeah, once I saw that there was only going to be 2 crystals, I knew I had to play a lot more aggressively than I usually do. So basically, once I saw 2 was going to be kind of a pain, it's just like, nope, not even going to bother. I can make that up somewhere. And once I knocked off 1, and I think it was 3 was the other one, just like, all right, go. You don't really need much because you already got most of it to start. And apparently I made up a lot more ground than I thought of in Great Palace there, because I think I really only fought Thunderbird twice, because the first time I didn't have enough magic for Thunderbird. But yeah, I just played a lot more aggressively, and it almost paid off.
So yeah, the big story of this seed was Dr. J early on. You made that big dive into Palace 2, and you got a ton of levels. It didn't get to place a gym, but you were at like 4-3-4 or something crazy. Those enemies were raining experience on you, whereas Victor did his overworld exploration, did other palaces. Victor got basically nothing from his first gym, and Victor went into Great Palace with attack 4. You went in with attack 6.
Yeah, I think I was 6-5 going in.
Yeah, so basically you spent a lot more time outside of Great Palace preparing and powering up. Victor went in with more or less the bare minimum. So Victor spent, it had to be more than 5 times as much time on Thunderbird as you. Both, it took him several attempts, and you know, the fights were just very long because at attack 4, Thunderbird took 48 hits. Whereas you had a, I'm not going to say it was a free Thunderbird, but at attack 6, I think most Rando players are pretty comfortable with it. So you got through Thunderbird much faster, and you also had a little better pathing in GP. That drop you walked over on the bridge just kind of led you through a short loop to the drop right next door. You didn't explore that, and Victor did. But yeah. So you saved a lot of time in GP, but it just was barely not enough to make up for Victor's head start going in.
Yeah, that's my usual strategy going into Great Palace, is just always go right and don't drop unless you've exhausted all your options there. It's made it a lot cooler.
This is like my second race this close in these tournaments. I had one with a 4-second lead against Schmitty in the last tournament. So I think I love seeing this kind of race. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm gonna definitely watch the BOD because yeah, this one was pretty interesting.
Especially with how different we played this one too.
Yeah, this one kind of yeah led you to doing things wildly, and yeah, when you start with 2 gems and a lot of items, you need to take gambles.
One thing I do want to ask you, Victor, about your strategy here. After you placed a gem in Palace 4, why did you up A?
Because I was in Maze Island and I hadn't found the other palace in the Western continent, and walking back from Maze Island was pretty long. Even the boots didn't help me, so yeah, that's why I up an 8, and I was looking for the palace in the Western continent, and then I was gonna take a different route to find the palaces that I was missing in the Eastern continent too.
Because yeah, I observed that the Western continent had palaces 1, 2, and 3. Maze Island had 4. The Valley of Death had Great Palace. I don't think the palaces were randomized between continents. I think that flag rolled to off here, so it seemed pretty likely after 4 that GP was going to be in the East.
Yeah,
I was wondering if you had that consideration, and if you didn't and you thought GP might be in the West, well, that would certainly explain a lot.
Yeah, I hadn't found one at that point, so I didn't know that was a thing in this city. So that's why I came back and was looking for that palace.
But yeah, it was a fun race. We saw a lot of different stuff happen. Of course, it was a great show of a little bit of the character of Max Rando, because it's hard to say a seed that only makes you place 2 gems, gives you all the good items up front, life heals 5 bars, and is inexpensive, fire paired with fairy. It's hard to say the seed was mean, but when the seed gives you this much, what's optimal can be pretty tough, right?
Definitely, yeah. And then just we'll make it up on the back end in GP.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of bothered me the most is that you kind of have to be careful with experience in these ones, and I game over close to level like twice, and then the fight with Ribonek, I game over once there, and the second time Ribonek just gave me 200, which is one of the lowest scores he can give you, and that didn't even get me another level. So yeah, I was very worried about my levels.
Well, Rebo's base 300, so it's a 40% chance he's going to give you 200 or 150. and a 60% chance gives you 300, 500, or 700, right?
Yep.
But yeah, that Rebo fight, Attack 2 was awful. Like, you hit him so many times and it just didn't matter. And then Attack 3 was, like, a lot better. So that was a major inflection point. And we never really saw it on Dr. J's side because Dr. J got Attack 3 so early in the seed, he didn't get to really soak in how terrible Attack 2 was.
Yeah, I think I was less than 10 minutes and I had Attack 4 at that point. So
I was very irritated at the Rebo fight because the setup wasn't working. I used this Rando sprite first because no one uses it. It's kind of cool. But one of the other reasons I use it is because it is one of the few sprites that has legs similar to Link's. So I use those legs to line up in the Rebo fight. But this time the color palette of the palace and the color palette of my sprite were giving me a hard time lining up, and I failed the setup twice. So yeah, I was pretty annoyed at that. Yeah, thankfully I was able to kill the guy.
And yeah, I guess the other story was, of course, you, Victor, pretty aggressively searched the Western continent, had downstab very early. It was more than a half an hour in when Dr. J finally found the town of Mido and picked up his downstab. So that was, even though Dr. J's levels were very strong early, he had the great inconvenience of not being able to stab downward.
Yeah, it just makes so much of a difference there, no matter what your level is, too.
Yeah, this Eastern continent was pretty stupid if you didn't have downstab. Thankfully, I found the town very quickly. That wasn't a concern for me.
But yeah, good games to both of you. That was a fantastic race. And I think you can both feel pretty good about the show you put on.
Yeah, GG, man.
I do. GG.
Yeah, thank you very much for making this possible. It was a pretty last minute thing, but yeah, thankfully it was possible for the people to see this. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
I think everyone's always happy to put on these shows. Thank you for running and giving the people what they want, more Zelda 2 action. So yeah, I'm out of stuff to ask, out of stuff to say. I want to thank everyone else for watching. Please follow these runners. They play no shortage of randomizers, so they will be able to show you a lot more what you saw here today if you liked it. Thanks a lot, everyone, for watching, and I'm sure ZSR is going to host someone or another. I'll leave that to our restreamer to make those calls.
And if possible, we might have another one of these tomorrow. There's one scheduled for tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. Zarnax 42 versus Level Engine. We'll see if we can get that one restreamed as well, but thank you, Amazing Empress, for joining in and helping out. Thank you, Jinxie Girl, for tracking for us tonight, and GG to both runners for a fantastic and very close race.